Good afternoon. This is Wayne Lewis with Prudential Gardner Realtors, and thank you for taking the time to hear our message regarding the contract. This is the third of 10 videos that we're producing to help you as a home buyer to go through the process and to have just a general understanding of what's involved. In this, our fifth video, and forgive me if I do refer back to my notes, but this, our fifth video, we're going to focus on the writing of the contract and perhaps talk about 5 things that may be of importance to you as you go through the process. Today, we're going to talk about knowing the value of your home. We're going to talk about specifying how you how you're going to purchase the home, whether you're going to pay cash or finance. And this may sound like a similar video earlier, but we're going to talk about it as it relates to the contract. We want you to also be aware of deadlines that are involved in writing the contract. And we may want to talk about specifying particular areas of inspection regarding the inspection. And of course, we're going to talk about terms and conditions, which is another vital portion of the contract. So if you will, bear with me for a few seconds. We'll start focusing on those 5 areas. Thank you. As we talk about the 5 areas, the first area that we want to talk about has to do with knowing the value of the home that you're interested in putting a contract on. Now, obviously, if you found the house that you love, you want to make sure that you don't pay too much for it, and of course, you want to get it for the best possible price. This is where your realtor or your appraiser can come in handy. Now, most often when you're working with a realtor, you can ask them, how much should I offer for a particular house? For example, the house may be $250,000, but you're not sure that's a good price. Your realtor can do what's called a CMA, or a comparative market analysis, which case that is a tool that realtors use that can compare the sale of other properties similar to the one that you're interested in, and to see if that property is properly priced. So one of the things that your realtor will help you is to determine whether the price that's on the house is best priced for the market that you're in. However, you may pose your contract when you're writing that offer. Make sure you're writing it in terms of what is best for you. In other words, a $250,000 house that may actually be worth $250,000 may also, or should also, coincide with how much you approved for. And we talked about that in video 2. But obviously, you want to make sure that the house you're looking at, when you put an offer in, you are offering as close to a reasonable price compared to the market as possible. Otherwise, if you put in too low an offer for a house, it's possible that the seller may ignore it, and you don't want to have to put in a second offer if the seller has not countered you. So make as reasonable offer as possible when writing a contract with your realtor. We're going to cover the next portion of our section very shortly, and we're going to talk about specifying how you're going to pay for that house, whether you're going to pay cash or financing, and why that is important. As we continue our discussion on video 3 of 10, and we're writing the contract, one of the things we've talked about in video 2 was whether or not you're going to go cash or financing. When you're writing the contract, there are 2 portions of the contract that ask that specific question. If you're going to go cash, you check off cash, obviously. If you're going to finance, you're going to check off financing, but it also is a little more involved than that. One of the things that a seller is looking at is, if you're going to finance your property, they want to know who you're going through. Now, this is not going to be on the contract, but it is a question that will come back to your realtor. Who are you going through? Have you already met with the lender? And if you have, then the information that you should have available to you when you're filling out this contract is uh, how much a down payment you're going to have put forth, how much you're going to be financing over what period of time, whether or not the loan might be a FHA, a conventional, a VA loan. And the reason this is important to us sellers because if you're going to finance a property, they want to know if there are any particular charges or fees that they may have to pay as a result of you financing. For example, you as a potential buyer may be asking for 3% or 6% assistance in helping to pay closing costs. And of course, this kind of decision helps the seller to determine whether or not to accept your offer. So please be sure to understand why when you say you're going to finance the purchase of your home, that the seller understands that down the road when you get to the closing table, if you've asked for $6,000, $8,000, even $10,000 in assistance, they have an opportunity to uh, consult with their realtor to see how much money they're going to get at the closing table. We don't want any surprises, so it's important that as a buyer, you have done your homework with your lender and with your realtor, and that you sit down and you look at that contract and you say, this is how much we want to finance, and oh, while we're financing, we're asking for 6% assistance, which may affect the total cost of that home purchase, selling, if you will, by the seller, and they may walk away with a little less than they would ordinarily. So it gives them an opportunity to see how much you're asking. Doesn't mean they'll accept what you're proposing, but they have to at least weigh it out. Okay, we've discussed specifying how you're going to finance the house. The next thing we're going to discuss is being aware of deadlines within the contract. I'll be with you shortly. As we continue our discussion on writing a contract, the third thing we like to discuss is deadlines. The contract has a number of deadlines, and I'd like to just go over them briefly with you. One of the deadlines may be loan approval, which might be from 25 to 30 days. Closing date, that means the point at which you go to the table and settle up with the title company, and that may include anywhere from 30 to 45 days, depends on the type of loan that you have. If you're talking about a cash sale, you could probably close sometimes in less than a week to 10 days. Inspection days, you usually ask for 10 to 12 days, and we'll go into that further in the next segment about inspection days. If there's an appraisal, how much time does the seller have in terms of the response on the appraisal, and of course response on the contract. So let's go over those right quick. Let's start with loan approval and closing date because they're interrelated. When we're talking about loan approval and you're financing a house, seller would like to know well before closing date that you have loan approval. For example, if today is May 1st and you're looking to close by, say, June 30th, which is 60 days, then they like to know maybe 55 days out that you were approved. If they actually probably like to know 30 days out, but if you understand the loan process and sometimes it can be extensive, uh, that time period probably at least be maybe 5 to 10 days before a projected close. Now, if you do find out in advance that you have loan approval well in advance, then you probably want to let the seller know, which helps to put them at ease. But certainly, if it's in the contract, most lenders will respect the date that's in the contract and to let you know that 5 days or 10 days before close that you have loan approval. The other date to follow loan approval is the closing date, and that can depend upon whether or not the package gets to the title company. The title company at that point, with other things already in play, gets the package and has done their work in terms of doing a abstract and a title search, and they're pretty much ready to roll. They'll give you that infamous phrase that that I love to hear, clear to close. We love to hear that phrase, clear to close, and that's what you're looking for. Another deadline is the inspection date. Usually, usually we ask for 10 days to do an inspection. Now, the inspection generally starts from the inspection period generally starts from the point at which the contract is accepted. For example, if we make an offer and we've gone through our offer and counter offer, and at the final point at which the seller and the buyer agree on a particular time period, for example, if they agree at 12 midnight Sunday, the inspection period begins automatically. If it begins Friday night at midnight, you have whatever number of days you have specified, 10 days on the inspection. Another time period that you need to be aware of in terms of deadline is the appraisal response. When we're talking about appraisals and they're completed, what happens is the seller's home has been appraised and is found to be, for example, maybe $50,000 less than the sales price. For example, if it was priced at $200,000 and is only appraised at $150,000, then the seller has the right, according to the contract, to have maybe 2, maybe 3 days to consider whether or not they'll accept the appraised value of their home. And if they do not, then you have the potential to nullify the contract, depending on the terms and conditions set forth. But for the most part, you should give them about 2 or 3 days to consider whether or not, if their home is below sales price, whether or not they'll accept that. We want to be sure we're talking about inspection too. I'm going to go back to inspection for a period of time here. Inspections. When we talk about inspection, we're talking about giving 10 to 12 days most of the time. But even as you do that, you want to make sure that when you ask for inspection time, that it's not around holidays. Oftentimes, a holiday that has, say for example, 3 days in it, where Friday, Saturday, and Sunday might affect it, you might want to ask for a little more than 10 or 12 days. You may want to ask for 15 days for inspection. Here in New Orleans, when we have our 2 weeks of Mardi Gras and things can get a little hectic and start slowing down, you might want to ask for 15 to 20 days because it's just a totally different animal around this city when that happens. But other circumstances may also affect whether or not you get 10 or 12 days. And if even in the original days that you asked for and nothing is going on, but you see that you might need some more time, your realtor and the seller's realtor can come to an agreement with the aid of both seller and buyer to ask for an extended period of time, maybe of 2 or 3 days, if you can justify why you need that additional time. So just bear that in mind. In this last segment, the fifth section of on this video number 3, we're going to talk about terms and conditions. It is a part of the contract, which is about 6-7 lines. And on those 6 or 7 lines, you have an opportunity to write certain terms and conditions as it relates to the buying process. For example, we've already talked about financing, but maybe there's an extra set of circumstances that may have to come into play. For example, maybe the lender is asking for certain things of the seller in order to move forward with the deal. So the seller has to be willing to work with you to get that information to the seller. Condo documents may be an issue. The condo documents may have to be overnighted or something to that effect. So you're asking the seller to be aware of those things. We continue to talk about inspections. It may have to do with having access to the property if it's, for example, a gated community. So the seller may be asked to put special notice to the security at the front gate to allow you access when you're visiting to do inspections and repairs. So the terms and conditions, they are part of what aren't necessarily covered in the overall contract. With about 300 some odd lines in the contract, something can be overlooked. So use the terms and conditions to specify certain things that aren't necessarily covered in the contract. After this, we'll do a conclusion, and we'll wrap up at this point. Thank you. Again, I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to our video here as we discuss the contract and writing it together. Let me also make sure you understand that these are just 5 selected areas that I've decided to focus on. But if you are aware of a contract, it has approximately 300 some odd lines in it. So obviously, we're not going to be able to cover everything without putting you to sleep. But it is important to at least talk about these few things, which I thought was important for you to understand, and that is knowing the value of the home when you put together a contract. To specify how you're going to finance the property is also important. You need to also be aware of deadlines, because deadlines can make or break a deal. You might want to put some specifics about the inspections in your terms and conditions, or you may cover some other areas that may be relevant when we're talking about terms and conditions. These are the 5 things I focused on. I really appreciate your time. If I can be any further assistance to you and you're not working with another agent, please call me, Wayne Lewis, at cell phone 512-786-7959. Our office at 504-242-9500. Prudential Gardner Realtors, 7100 Reed Boulevard in New Orleans, Louisiana. Thank you again for this tremendous opportunity, and I look forward to seeing you in the follow-up videos, number 4 through 10. Thank you and best wishes.